Hi, welcome back to the Benchmarkers Rugby Show. My name is Kumbi. I'm a data scientist, but most importantly, in the context of these videos, I am a rugby fan. Like to watch a lot of rugby, like to analyze a lot of rugby, and I'm usually joined by Nyasha. But of course, Springbok celebrations, so he's out and about, which is perfectly understandable. I think, especially if you're in and around South Africa after last night's win, or at least it's last night at the time when I'm recording. After last night's win, it's just been a vibe. It's just been a massive celebration. Everyone went behind the team, was behind the Springboks team. It's just been an amazing weekend. Obviously, for me, I'm an All Blacks fan, but by the time I moved to South Africa, I was really in too deep. But I think this weekend was the first time I really wanted to make that switch. So yeah, so I think it's been an amazing response to the World Rugby World Cup. Amazing engagement. It's just been an amazing weekend, an amazing tournament. So yeah, so today we're just going to be talking about the Rugby World Cup Final, right? So the two biggest teams in world rugby's history came together last night or at least Saturday night, in the Rugby World Cup final, in the second Rugby World Cup final matchup, and South Africa won the game 12 points to 11. Right, so what we're going to do in this video is we're just going to go through an overview of the key moments that happened in the game. We're just going to look at the stats and then just some key players, and then that'll be that. All right, so just starting off with the key moments, right? So just to start off with the beginning of the game, right? So I think the Springboks did quite well, in my opinion, to manage the game really well, right? So they used their defense, their rush defense, the physicality to win the contact and just make sure that New Zealand didn't get any go forward. But also they did quite well in the kicking game as well. They made sure that their kicks were a little bit more contestable, higher and shorter. And the All Blacks during that same period, they were kicking a little bit longer. They were giving time for the chasers to just to get a few extra steps before they met the first defender. So the Springboks did really well, just managing the game with their physicality, their defense, and also their kicking as well. All right, but within that first 10 to 15-minute period, we had a key moment that happened was that Bongi Mbonambi got injured, right? So Shannon Frizzell was clearing him out, and then in the process of doing that, he then rolled onto and he put his weight on Bongi's the side of his leg. Looks like they may have been some structural damage there, but we'll wait and see what the medical reports say. Just going into the European tournaments as well, just to see what his availability would be like. But that did two things. The first thing was that Shannon Frizzell obviously went off for 10 minutes. He is usually there. I know they've got Adi Save, but they usually go to him to get that up front, that physicality, that ball carrying. They usually go to him, especially with games against teams like South Africa. So they did manage to do that because he was off the field. So that was the first thing that happened. The second thing that happened because of that, was a result of that play, was the fact that the Springboks now had to bring on Dion Fourie. Now, in previous videos, we've talked about the fact that the Springboks couldn't afford to have an injury at hooker because they didn't have any specialist cover. They chose to bring in Pollard, and that meant that they had to make some plans to get guys like Dion Fourie who have experience in other tournaments, maybe not as much experience at test match level, to play them at hooker. So that means that, Dion Fourie had to come on. And just looking at the way that the game played out, he did really well. Yeah, especially in his open field game, right? So I think at the breakdown and also ball carrying, this physicality in general, I think the Springboks definitely benefited from him being on the field, but they struggled at the line out, right? I think Brody Retallick especially, I remember specifically him picking off two lineouts just clean at the lineout. Just it looks like it's New Zealand ball, basically just at the front. Catches it clean. So and then when they tried to go back, Scott Barrett was waiting at the back as well. So they really struggled at line out time. But I think overall, just because obviously it's a matter of trade-offs. They chose to bring in Pollard, who ended up winning them the tournament, versus the negatives that they would get from the lineup. So I think that decision, that risk, paid off. So obviously, as the game progressed, the Springboks took their points, and then another moment that then happened that was significant was that especially after as the All Blacks were starting to wrestle back momentum into the game, they were wrestling back territory and so on. Using I think one thing that they did well was they were playing narrow around the fringes. All those pick and goes. I don't know what the proper English term for that would be, but then they were carrying and picking the ball around the rucks using Frizal when he came back on, Adi Savia, and also most significantly Mark Tilley. I think when wingers work off, and I really wish that wingers would do this more, but when they work off those around the rucks where they're forwards, and then they can, that little step will throw them off, will throw off the opposition forwards. So he did quite well at that, and then he was also offloading when he got his hand free as well. So they did quite well at that, and then they put South Africa on the back foot. But then in the 28th minute, Sam Kane bear hugs Jesse Creel, and obviously because he didn't lower his tackle height, got him shoulder straight in the head. He gets a red. I mean, first it was a yellow card, and then was upgraded to a red after review. So that was one of the most significant moments of the game, because for the rest of the game, the All Blacks had to play with 14 men. Right, and then, after that, basically the Springboks kept on taking the opportunities. They scored 12 points, all their 12 points actually in that first half. And I think one of the most critical moments in the game, I think this is around the 33rd minute, when I think the Springboks are up 9 points to 3. So the All Blacks are still, a one try behind, or they're at least within one converted try. So once again, the Springboks kick and then it bounces. Will Jordan gets the ball in the New Zealand 22. He tries to dummy a pass going into the inside, and then he goes on the outside, and who's waiting for him? It's big Peter Steph du Toit. Like, listen, if there's one person you don't want, just if you turn around, just see him coming down right at you, it's Peter Steph, right? So Peter Steph hits Will Jordan. The All Blacks, they retain the ball, but they're under pressure. The next phase, I think it's the next phase or the phase after that, you can see when the camera pans out, you could see Kolisi lining up, right? So he lines up Adi Save. As soon as Adi Save gets the ball, because they like to go to Adi in those moments when they're under pressure in their 22. Sia Kolisi doesn't try to go high, doesn't do anything, he just goes for his legs, just a textbook tackle, and then Adi Safia goes straight down, which doesn't usually happen, but he goes straight down. And then either on that ruck or in the next one, the Springboks didn't go over the ball, they win the turnover, and it's a penalty, they go up 12 points to 3. So it's those moments, I think it's, that play for me, I think that was the play of the game, because it showed the different aspects that won the Springboks the game. They're kicking, physicality on defense, and their turnovers, and also kicking for goals and taking your points, right? So that basically encapsulates how the Springboks basically beat the All Blacks. So yeah, so that's how that first half basically played. Those are the key moments of the first half. And then just speaking of Khalees, he had two key moments in the second half. The first one, I think, once again, the Springboks kicked the ball. It must have been it's either Richie Mwanga or it's most likely Bowden Barrett. Bowden Barrett knocks it on, and then Sia Kolisi catches it. So basically, this is now a break down the line, and Kolisi has two men, one supporting guy on the wing. I think it must have been Arnside, and then one guy on his inside. He dummies because Jody Barrett is doing well at holding that line, but also selling that he's going to the wing. I don't think Jody would have caught the winger had that ball gone, but Sia Kolisi holds on, and then it's basically a turnover because they held up over the line. That was a key moment. And then he also had a key moment a few moments after that. So that was the 41st minute. And then in the 48th minute, that's when he hit Adi Savea, because I think it looked like Kolisi's job was to target Adi Savea for that game. And he did quite well. But it's that in that moment, the tackle was too high. It looked like he may have hit the ball first, and then his head just then slides up, and then it hit Adi in there. Well, not really slides up. It was like an instantaneous thing, but then his head hits Adi in the head as well, in the face as well. Then he goes off, but because there's mitigation factors, Kolisi his tackle height was low, and I think because that first point of contact wasn't with the head, he comes back. It's only a yellow card, and then he can come back after 10 minutes. So that was a key moment, right? And I think because of this, and also the fact that the All Blacks were using that line out to get back into the game slowly, they were starting to wrestle back momentum to get back into the game. And they were putting the Springboks under pressure, because in the 54th minute, Aaron Smith scores a try, but fortunately, I think Etzebeth had hit wherever the jumper was, and the ball had been dislodged, and therefore there was a knock-on, so they had to come back. But the Springboks continued to be under pressure even after Kolisi had come back on, and then Bowden Barrett scores a try in the corner, which Mwanga misses, unfortunately. And I think it's interesting because we talk about how we've done some analyses on kicking, because the concern was always the Springboks, the fact that their kicking percentage was so low with Lebok and bringing in Pollard now, he's had 100% kicking success, whether it's penalties, conversion, whatever it is. He's taken basically every single point available since he's come on into the World Cup. Versus the All Blacks, who they missed a conversion, and then later on in the game they also missed a penalty at goal. They missed 5 points, which would have won them the game. So I think it's a bit funny how it's played out, because it's now the All Blacks whose kicking has now let them down. But they missed that conversion, and that's the last scoring that happens in the games, because the score is 11-12 to the Springboks. And from there, the Springboks did really well at managing the game. Once again, they went back to their kicking. They went back. The scrum was solid on both sides for the whole game, and just that physicality, that defense. The last, I guess, significant talking point that happened in the game was Colby. He went off for a. I think he knocked down the ball when the All Blacks could have gone and scored. Basically, he stopped a try-scoring opportunity. It was a line break opportunity. To be honest, I think he took one for the team there, because had Anton Leonard-Brown's offload gone off, whoever was, I don't remember, was on the wing, because Will Jordan was off, but whoever was on the wing, they had Rico Ioane coming off on the inside. So it's either they would have scored, or they would have been stopped in a critical position where they could have gone for a try, gone for a penalty, whatever it was. So I think Kobe took one for the team in that moment. So yeah, but then the Springboks, it's very important just to note that they had 75% territory in the last 10 minutes of the game, even though they lost the territory battle. We'll look at the numbers in a moment, but they managed to play the game in the right areas, especially in the key moments in the last 10 minutes of that match. All right, so that's just an overview of the game. And then we're just going to look at the key areas of just the key stats, the different aspects of the game, the set pieces, the attack, the defense, and so on. So obviously, the score was 12 points 11, just to look at the overview, 12 points 11 South Africa. But the All Blacks, there was only one try scored from the All Blacks, but that wasn't converted. Springboks won the game because they took their penalties. Andre Pollard basically won them the game once again, right? So that was where they won. So 4 penalties, 1 from South Africa, and then 2 from New Zealand. They tried to go to the corner a little bit more, which it did pay off for the try, but maybe in some moments, you could have gone for posts, I guess. And then just look at the possession. The All Blacks had 60% possession. They had 53% territory, which means they had the ball. They had the ball in the right areas. They just didn't manage to capitalize on that because of that South African defense. All right. And then just to look at the key areas within the game, right? So we start off with kicking, right? So the Springboks had fewer, right? So they basically had more kicks from hand. They had 38, the All Blacks had 34. But from those 38, they only kicked 1,002 meters versus the All Blacks, who kicked 1,022 meters, which means per kick, the Springboks were kicking shorter. Right, so they had fewer meters per kick. Right, so they were trying to kick a little bit shorter, higher, more contestable. All Blacks, might have they might have gone a little bit too long on the day. So I think, the Springboks they had the better kicking game for this particular game. Right, and then set piece, right? So I think this is the most interesting part of the game for me, because if you look at scrums, the scrums were solid. We came in, we were talking about how the Springboks could get penalties off scrums. There was not a single penalty. There was not a single free kick off a scrum. The scrum was just beautiful to watch. It was a tight contest. Even when the bomb squad came on, I felt the guys who started for the All Blacks held their own at the scrum. They did collapse, but I think the ref did say that both teams were collapsing. So that was, they were forced to use that and play the back. So the All Blacks had 100% scrum success, 2 out of 2. The Springboks had 91%. I don't really remember the one that they lost, but they had 10 out of 11 scrums. All right, and then the line-out. So this was a key area because it allowed the All Blacks to get back into the game. The All Blacks had 20 out of 22. The Springboks had 6 out of 10, right? But you could argue that the All Blacks, because they lost in the first half, they had, they had the ball, the line-out in key areas, and they overthrew. So they could have lost line-outs that were a little bit more critical. And then also just to speak about the line-out, so obviously we spoke about how Fourie performed. I thought it was interesting because Etzebeth was also putting a lot of pressure on the All Blacks line-out as well. And then once Jean Klein came in, it was a little bit more because they weren't really contesting as effectively. So I think Etzebeth did really well at line-out time. So I think that's very important to note. Right, so just to look at the last two elements of the game, we'll start with attacking. Right, so you'll notice that the All Blacks basically had all the attacking stats. They had the meters, right? So they had 459 versus 360. They had more runs, 149 versus 85. More defenders beaten, 37 versus 14. That's more than double, right? More gain line carries, 66 for the All Blacks, 37 for the Springboks. South Africa did have more offloads. I think they did quite well at offloading the ball and putting the All Blacks under pressure. They had Springboks had 7, All Blacks had 5, and then because the All Blacks had more ball, they had more rucks won. They had 115. Springboks had 56, so that's more than double once again, right? So the All Blacks the attack was putting the Springboks defense under pressure, but the Springboks defense basically won the game because they won that, they made the critical hits, they won basically the contact area, and also they made critical turnovers in critical moments of the game. So if you look at the defensive stats, the Springboks had 209 tackles, right? Of those tackles, 80%, they had an 80% success rate, right? It's not a great number, but, it did the job on the day. Because if you look at the other side of the ball, the All Blacks had 92. That's less than half the number of tackles. They had 78% success rate. That's not, you don't want to be in the 70s. You don't want to be anywhere below 85, right? Especially in a final, right? And then penalties conceded. South Africa, because once again they were under pressure, they had 10 penalties conceded. The All Blacks had 5. But then it was these last 3 key stats were quite key. The first one, turnovers won. Springboks, so like we said, they brought in Dion Free. He's an open side flanker. He's an out and out fetcher, right? I don't know if he actually won any turnovers, but he's basically a problem at the breakdown. And I think he basically won the game. He was one of the reasons why the Springboks won the game at the breakdown, right? So 7 turnovers, 1 for South Africa, 2 for the All Blacks. The Springboks had 2 yellow cards, Khaleesi and Kolbe. One of them, the All Blacks didn't manage to get the 3 points from Kobe's one, and that Jody Barrett will probably come back better for that, but he did miss that one that could have won in the World Cup. And then All Blacks on the other side, Frizal had a yellow card, and then they had 1 red card in the game, which belonged to Sam Cane. And I think, just speaking on the yellow card, I think it's very impressive as well for the All Blacks. I think both teams were really impressive in different moments, in different times, at different points, in different aspects of the game. But I think the All Blacks just being able to keep up and wrestle back into the game with 14 men for more than 50 minutes in the game, that was a very impressive feat. So yeah, so that was those were basically the key stats that happened in the game. And then just to look at a couple of performers, obviously Peter Steph du Toit, just monster performance, right? Like, he won man of the game. He had 28 tackles, 88% tackle success rate, right? So it was the workhorses that won the game. With South Africa, it's not about being flash. It's about working together as a pack, getting that dominance, and then winning the game, taking advantage of the pressure that you put on your opposition because of that, because of winning that contact and the physicality. All right, so Peter Steph, man of the match. I don't think anyone can dispute that. But they also had a couple of, I think everyone worked quite well, but just noteworthy performances. Other workhorses. Khaleesi, he had 14 tackles, 1 missed tackle, so 82%. Franco Mostert is a workhorse, right? So he got 16 out of 16 tackles, 100% success rate. So basically, those were the 3 forwards who I think just led from the front. And then obviously Handré Pollard, 4 out of 4. He can't miss a kick from anywhere. You make a mistake, it doesn't matter. He's gonna get the 3 points. So Handré Pollard is one of the other key players as well. And then just to finish off on the All Black side, right? Adi Savea. It doesn't matter whether his team is winning, whether his team is losing. Adi Savea is always going to lead at the front. I think he's leaving for Japan next year. I don't know if he's going to captain the All Blacks next year. But, he basically is there on the field, just leads from the front. So he had 45 meters, the highest amongst forwards. Very impressive. I think he also had a charge down on Pollard. It didn't really matter at the end of the day because they didn't win anyway. But he kept them in the game, kept them within 1 point. So that was very impressive. And then Mark Telea, just the fact that he was working off those around the fringes, he gave the All Blacks, he amongst other players, he managed to wrestle back momentum into the game with that aspect. And I really wish I think I've said this before in this video. I really wish more wings would play in that manner, because it really puts pressure on the forwards, because they usually just used to guys just coming at them. That little step, it does quite a lot, and it puts questions in the defender's mind. So he did really well at that as well. Okay, so that's basically that, and I think that was an amazing final. Probably shaved off a few years of my life, but you know, we'll take that. That's not a problem. So yeah, I mean, congratulations to the Springboks. You know, like I said, I'm also going to be involved in the celebrations as well, but we're going to be celebrating until well into the week. So congratulations to the Springboks. Obviously, would have liked guys like Sam Whitelock, Brody Vitalik, Aaron Smith, who I think is the best 9 to ever play. Bowden Barrett, Richie Mo'unga too have gone, you know, been sent off in a better fashion. That didn't happen, unfortunately, for All Blacks fans. But what an amazing game. What an amazing rivalry. So yeah, we look forward to some more rugby. Obviously, we're going to look at more aspects of on this channel of the World Cup. But you know, we're going to be looking at the other European tournaments as well. We're looking forward to that. And then also, it's just going to be interesting as rugby fans just to see how the next cycle goes as well. South Africa, you know, Rassie Erasmus is going to be coming in as interim coach for the All Blacks. They're going to be going into the Razor Scott Robinson era now. And you know, they're losing some key figures. France, very good young core. Ireland is coming back, right? So it's going to be very interesting. So yeah, basically that's the World Cup. Congratulations to Springbok fans, and yeah. So please don't forget to like the video, comment, subscribe to our channel. We really do appreciate the engagement that we've gotten throughout the World Cup, and yeah, we'll see you in the next video. Cheers.
At that experience.